Hey Bella, so thanks for joining me. I'm going to try to kind of get your views on the studio, kind of what it's like being a graphic designer here at OSU.
Yeah, so my name is Bella, and I started working at the studio about 2 years ago. And when I first started working there, I was pretty nervous. I looked up to all the people that were in the studio at the time, and so I just felt pretty underqualified at first, just because they were all really amazing designers.
What was the kind of interview process like for you? Was it nerve-wracking? What did you kind of prepare?
There was a pretty big series of questions, and there was a large interview panel, so a lot of people were there. And once you got through the first round, which I obviously did, there was a second round. Yeah, after the second round, I felt a little bit more confident going into the questions, and felt good talking about my portfolio, but it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
How about you? How was your interview process?
Oh man, so I've been in the studio 4 years now. Originally I was in chemical engineering. I was still a chemical engineer when I applied for the job. But I had been doing kind of a lot of graphic design kind of on the side. It's something I'd always done on the side in high school. I had just finished my internship doing research in a bioprocess engineering lab with Dr. Rohr, and I was kind of looking for something different. And so I was looking through jobs at OSU, and I found out they were doing internships, design internships. So I thought I'd give it a shot. I kind of quickly pulled a portfolio together the day before my interview. I sent it in. I was super nervous because I didn't know anybody in the program. And it was about 20 people were in my first interview in a large table in the SEC. I walked out of it not really knowing what to expect. And then I got kind of a second callback, which was awesome, from athletics and the MU Creative Studio. And it was about kind of a 4-person interview in the studio. So it was really cool to see how an agency, kind of an OSU agency functions. I got to meet kind of all the students within the studio, kind of have that one-on-one with them and kind of explain my work a little bit more, which was something I didn't get to do in kind of the larger interview just because there were so many people. But yeah, I got an email saying that I had got the job, and I was super stoked, and it made me transition from chemical engineering into graphic design. I really couldn't imagine myself anywhere else, so I really have the studio to thank for that.
Well, did you know anything about the studio prior to getting the job, and were you nervous about once you got the job, were you nervous about working there?
Oh yeah, I was super nervous. I started in the summer in June, and I had no experience with any design classes. I hadn't taken any in high school, so I was kind of unprepared for the file prep, how to work with different programs, because I was only really familiar with Illustrator at the time. And so it kind of was a lot of trial and error with clients kind of in the beginning, learning kind of what files they needed, how to prepare them. So there's a lot of talking kind of with printing and mailing specifically, because they handle a lot of the files that we give clients. And so kind of I learned a lot through trial and error, which was great. And it was kind of over a year that I really built that confidence in knowing kind of how to be a designer and how to work in the studio.
Cool.
When you get to the studio, you kind of find out there are a lot of unwritten rules that people talk about. What were some of those kind of rules that you found out, maybe through trial and error?
First, a couple of things. Sticky notes and computer mouses were very valuable in the studio, so you should never steal those off of anyone's desk without asking.
Don't steal them.
Also, just some other things that I learned. I was pretty nervous about printing going into the studio, and I quickly learned the reason why Sassy is called Sassy. So you should always give yourself enough time for printing, because you never know when Sassy's gonna give on you. But
That's true.
Yeah, or run out of paper. But yeah, those are some things that are kind of known in the studio. What about you? What do you think is kind of a given rule in the studio?
Oh man, I'd say, it's okay to kind of be weird and pull pranks on people. We're all pretty close knit. Even though we're like kind of professional, we're students at heart as well. So, it's okay to play pranks, especially on your boss, Kent.
What are some of those pranks that have been pulled in? Which ones are the best?
Oh man, so kind of the running joke in the studio is that Kent's never in his office. We always have clients that just wander in. They say, "Is Kent here?" But he's always gone in meetings, and so we never know where he's at. And so kind of last year we got this giant cutout of the chef for Pangea, and it was sitting in our studio, and so whenever someone walked in, they'd always be surprised by this man standing there. And so Kent was gone for a week, and so we put it in his office. So whenever someone looked in and came around the corner, there would be this random chef at his desk, and it was always surprising and pretty funny.
Cool. Well, speaking of fun in the studio, what kind of music plays in the studio?
Oh man, so usually people just take charge if they want to listen to certain music, but at least for me, my running joke, I only play really 2 songs. The first one is All I Want for Christmas. That plays from summer solstice to Christmas Day. And then after that, I like to get a little summer themed, and so I play Dance of the Greek or Dance of Zorba. It's kind of a little fun Greek song. So that plays from winter to the summer solstice. People say they hate it, but they really like it.
It gives you comfort.
Yeah. So kind of one of the things I noticed is that we're pretty disgusting people in the studio. What are some of the grossest things you've seen?
Well, moldy cups for sure. This one time I left a cup in there for quite some time, and all different colors of mold showed up. There was neon pink, neon orange, neon green. It was pretty beautiful, but gross.
I'd have to agree with that. Yeah, I mean, there's beauty in grossness, definitely.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah, and I think, well, all of us at some point have left moldy tea bags or backwash in a cup and left it over break. So we're all guilty of it, I think.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh man, that's a great question. Originally I found myself kind of as an illustrator in the beginning, and kind of over the course of the last 4 years in the program, I've started to kind of grow appreciation for branding specifically. And I've also grown an interest kind of in data visualization, kind of with my background in chemistry and math. That's always been kind of in my heart, and so kind of finding a middle ground between design and math has always been kind of a passion for me. And so I see kind of myself either going into places where I can work with data or working for a branding studio specifically. I'm really not sure kind of where I'm going to be. I mean, I'll take kind of whatever I can get. What about you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Yeah. I know it's a big question to ask.
It's kind of a tough question. I'm really not sure, but I think over the past 2 years, I've really grown to like feminism and design, which is what I'm doing my senior thesis on. So I think I can see myself really going the route of social justice and design, maybe eventually doing some nonprofit work. I also really love photography, so I could see myself doing some sort of mix of photography and design, or just at least really valuing that along the way. But I'm really not sure where I'm going to be in 5 years. It's hard to predict that, but yeah.
I know this is going to be another big question, but where do you see design going in 5 years?
Yeah.
Has the studio helped you kind of determine where you might see design going here locally and just as a whole?
Yeah. Even just in class, I've kind of noticed, and working at the studio, even Kent was just mentioning recently how we should be incorporating more animation into our portfolio, and in class how we've been doing a lot of video work and just more UI and UX design. So I really think that design is going more the route of digital, but I do think there is still kind of a need for printing. There's always going to be a need for print, and people are always going to value that. But I really think that digital design is a good way to kind of reach out to people. Where do you think design is going to go in the next 5 years?
Like you, I think it's going to be largely digital, but I also think there's kind of going to be this pushback with everything becoming so digital. So there's going to be, people are going to be start leaning towards kind of this handcrafted feel to make things feel more personal to them. But I also see kind of a growing trend in data, with privacy and everything. People are becoming more concerned about their privacy, and there's a lot more data coming out with technology. And so the problem is to kind of find a way for the public to be able to conceptualize this data in an easy way and understand it and make decisions. So yeah, I definitely see kind of data and how the public views it becoming really important in the next 5 years.
So I have to ask this question. What is your medieval cat, and what does it look like?
I'd say that my medieval cat looks like this.
Mine looks like this.
I see it.
All right.